Hi, I'm Kirby Franzi, and for Media History 5320, I will be discussing the Week 5 question, which is discuss the media's responsibility to the public. Does the media have a responsibility to give the people what they want or to give the people what they need? Who makes the determination what the people want or need, and what are your thoughts? So to start off, I wanted to make the comparison that Dr. Hart mentions in one of his videos, that to the people who were printing things during the 1800s, it made absolutely it was common sense to them to put out their opinions with what they were publishing so that their points could get across, and that they could hope to get others on board with their thought process and to make some pivotal changes that they felt like absolutely had to be made during their time. I think similarly to that, many journalists in the current day feel like the people in the 1820s. Journalism in current day America seems to have taken a turn for the way journalism was handled in the beginning stages. I think more and more journalists are taking advantage of their platforms, especially on mainstream media, where you wouldn't typically see. You're not supposed to see people necessarily doing that. I think you're seeing it a lot more to get their viewpoints out, just as many people in Chapter 5 did that we discussed, like James Gordon Bennett, Horace Greeley, Benjamin Day, and Frederick Douglass. I looked up an article from ER Services where columnist Ellen Goodman notes that there has always been a tension in journalism between being first and being right. She argues in today's amphetamine world of news junkies, speed trumps thoughtfulness too often. That ties in with the fact that in order to answer this question, I think it needs to be said that in order for for the media to stay afloat, there's just so much that kind of goes into that. In the question, who makes, should they give the people what they want or what they need? The reality is that if they are constantly giving people what they want, it's partly in because of the fact that they have to stay afloat, they have to stay relevant, they have to stay on air. If news media just started 100% of the time giving people what they need, we would see a shift in maybe the top news sites. I think that there would be a change there that would be interesting to see. Page 130 details the fact that, in congruence with what I was saying, with the fact of it, the news mainstream media giving people what they want and not so much what they need, that ties into something I found really interesting, which was the Helen Jewett murder. On page 130, it states that the news of the Mexican Army's defeat of the Alamo during the Texas Revolution reached New York City the same weekend as Miss Jewett was murdered, but her murder grabbed more attention than the historic battle. I found that quite interesting. Also, more people go to mega search engines like Yahoo and Google to search for different news sites than going straight to the websites themselves. They get double the traffic because people just want to pick and choose their content, which I found really interesting as well. The Center for Excellence in Journalism has called the news industry today more reactive than proactive. Principles of media ethics that all journalists should abide by but don't. And the current climate is to present news stories that inform and serve the needs of citizens, present issues fairly, present stories in a way that addresses their complexity, present diverse perspectives, monitor government and corporations. So after reading those, I would say that if you're watching the mainstream media and you feel like those things aren't being addressed or being followed, then I would just encourage people to not be sheep and to look up facts and double check what they're hearing. Also, to tie into that, responsible journalism ensures accuracy, reports the truth, stays loyal to citizens by putting the public interest above all else, is protective and sensitive to those involved in the news, remains objective and presents information in a neutral way, and allows for commentary and opposition. However, there's always going to be a degree of bias when it comes to journalism, because journalists are always going to, like I was saying at the beginning, want to naturally bring in his or her own perspectives into their work, and that's just always going to happen. In a study by UCLA by political scientists that was done in 2005, it studied 20 media outlets. It found that 18 had a perspective that leaned more to the left, while only 2, being the Washington Times and Fox News, went to the right for the average conservative voter. Which means that half of America is not having their, it's not being represented, which I think is going to leaves a lot of people to not trust the news. When it comes to answering, does the media have a responsibility to give the people what they want or to give the people what they need? I think yes. The media has a responsibility to give people what they need, which is to present stories that inform and benefit citizens. However, when it comes to the mainstream media, if they want to stay on air and continue to be in the competitive market, I think they have to give viewers what they want instead. However, as we read in the article about James Gordon Bennett from Chapter 5 on page 131 and 132, despite him being a forward thinker and innovator when it came to how he handled news reporting, and that he hired a female staffer, in the current cancel culture perpetuated by the mainstream media, people who made great advancements in history when it comes to journalism and freedom of thought are getting revoked. The article that was posted in Unit 5 states that controversy has followed Bennett many decades after his death. For many years, the New York City Fire Department has awarded a medal for heroism named for James Gordon Bennett. The publisher, with his son, had set up a fund to award the medal to heroic firefighters in 1869. In 2017, one of the recipients of the medal issued a public call to rename the medal in light of the elder Bennett's history of alleged racist comments. So that's just an example of current day wanting to erase history, even if it seems to have, they were a pretty good influence. When it comes to answering the question of who makes the determination of what people want or need, most of us know, as of where in the 1950s, there was around 50 companies that owned 90% of the media. Now there is 6. So once again, that goes back to me saying, there's 6 people that owns all of the mass media. So if you feel like something that you're hearing is like you're in an echo chamber and you're hearing just the same rhetoric from every single news channel, and it starts to seem odd, when that starts to happen to me, I start looking up what else is going on in the world. Why are they all talking about the same thing? And then I start trying to just find alternate information, because that just always makes me think something else is happening in the world, and usually there is. Real world examples of when the media jumped on a story that encompassed the news so much so that you couldn't get away from it, times when I went, what else is going on in the world, was definitely with Jesse Salme, the person that claimed that he was attacked by Trump supporters, and in reality, I believe that happened in Chicago, and there was about 8, that was an area where it was 85% Hillary Clinton voters at the time. But all of the news sites, despite how unlikely his claim was, they all jumped on that story and ran with it. And it just, when I was reading in Chapter 7 about the Sun newspaper in 1835, Richard Adams Locke produced the Moon Hoax. I couldn't help it just totally reminded me. It was like very similar to that story with Jesse Salme. The Moon Hoax article was on page 127, as I'm sure y'all know. But yes, many news outlets blindly grasp onto stories that reek of falsehoods. But I'll just close with saying that I think history always repeats itself. I think history is doing just that. History is being erased all around us, from historical statues coming down to James Bennett being removed from the title of that heroism award that I mentioned earlier. Cancel culture is canceling things everywhere, and I think history is repeating itself. I appreciate y'all listening to my video, and I hope that y'all all have a good night and take care. Thanks.